Om Mangalam Gurudevaya Devya Matriksha Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Vrindevyo Sarvalokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Chidarmasya Sarvadharma Surupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishna Yate Namaha Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Parapadme Tuyostritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu Om Sarashiva Samarambam Shankarachara Majmam Ashmarachara Prayantam Vande Gurum Paramparam Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Reva Param Brahman Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Bhadrakali Namo Nityam Saraswati Namo Namaha Vera Viranga Vedanta Vijasthanava Evacha Sri Ganesha Sharada Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om Jai Ma Jai Ma. Happy to be continuing our discussions on the Devi Gita of the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam. And we're really just come up, I thought I'd get further last week, but we'll definitely get to the end of this, this like penultimate moment before the Devi will appear. All we mentioned last week, the verses we read last couple of weeks, were the various types of sadhanas that the gods are performing. And we'll continue along those lines. There's 2 or 3 more sadhanas mentioned in today's verses. So we can understand the types of sadhanas that the devas performed, or the types, another way of thinking that, the types of sadhana that are mentioned in the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, right, in this genre of literature, in this genre of sadhana. And also, in another way of saying that, these are the types of sadhanas that are authorized in the Devi Bhagavatam. These are the background sadhanas for the tradition of the text that we're discussing, right? And one thing we hinted at last week was this term, this kecit term, that, some gods did this while other gods did this, and other gods did this, right? Mentioning that the various gods in the story were performing different types of sadhanas according to their nature, their expertise, also their motivation. There's different motivation, different sadhanas align with different types of spiritual motivations, right? And then we hinted at last week that another way to interpret that image is the various gods being various aspects, higher aspects, divine aspects of ourselves. And so the various aspects of ourselves are doing different types of sadhana. That implies that we have, of course, we have different aspects of ourselves. We get everybody on the same page. We sometimes joke, all the voices, like when we sit down to do kirtan, right? One of our devotees used to say this, that when he sat down to lead a bhajan or kirtan, he said, okay, everyone, all the voices in my head, sing this together. Let's all sing together. The Sankirtan is not a joined devotee. There's all the various aspects of ourselves all together, put everything in one direction. So we can think of it that way, the different aspects of ourselves doing different sadhanas in the same direction, perhaps. One thing I was meditating upon this afternoon, wanted to point that out again, or underline it again. It also is that we ourselves have different, even the same person may be doing different sadhanas for one goal, but sometimes, I think this is also true, sometimes we do the different sadhanas and different gods in the story can represent different motivations. We don't always have one motivation. We may have a motivation, the ultimate, maybe we have a far off motivation of union with God, or divine knowledge or liberation, some abstract idea. Maybe it's a strong burning passion to have union with God. Maybe it's at the forefront, right? At the same time, there may be a very realistic desire or prayer for safety or for health or for intervention like this. So how we can understand this. And what the gods are praying for, if we remember the frame story, is that a demon is taken over, right? And they need the divine mother to incarnate, to come down as Parvati, to be born in the Himalayas, right? Where they are, who's the main spokesperson for the gods. So the rest of from next week on, it's going to be, the only one speaking is going to be Himalaya himself. So could be representing the body, perhaps also our person, our physical person. So the goddess needs to descend and agree to be born, to manifest. Only then will the demon be killed, the Tarakasura be killed. So we can take that a little bit, it's actually quite profound, I think. This could be taken as not just a mythological story about the gods praying and having a vision of the goddess who will be born as Parvati. We know that's the birth of Parvati is central to all the stories. Our devotion to Shiva is based upon it. Our devotion, or the development of the Shakti traditions of goddess worship of Parvati and Kali and Durga and Dhumavati and all the different goddesses are tied up with the idea of Parvati, Shiva's consort being Parvati, right? That's very, very important. But if we take it all aspects of ourselves, praying for Divine Mother to be born, right? Or the Divine Mother to descend as Parvati, to be born in the body, or to awaken from the body. You can think of it as maybe Kundalini symbolism, right? This could be understood as praying for illumination, right? When the goddess is awakened, when the goddess is realized, when the goddess is incarnated, right? When she awakens and she descends, right? Then the gods, all their desires are fulfilled. Their various desires are fulfilled, right? From union with her, which they get, to fulfilling of their aspirations, which they get, to the killing. And what happens? She comes, she illuminates everybody, she instructs everything, and she destroys the demons. She kills the demons, the darker aspects. If the gods can represent, if we take the gods represent the higher aspects of ourselves, in our personality, we can then take the asuras, the anti-gods, to be the lower aspects of our personality. And in the classic list, these lower aspects, I mean, they're in the Chandi, they're given there's so many, and we have unlimited, perhaps. There's hordes of armies, right? We are legion, I think somebody one time said when he was asked directly, right? Who are you, right? So it could be a vast variety. But their main faces, we know, these are lust, anger, greed, jealousy, envy. You know, these are the main ones that we always come up, the various aspects of our selfishness that come up, right? Each one of them has friends and cohorts and accomplices, right? And children and armies that go with them, right? So we can see these are the penultimate verses. They're doing sadhana. Why? They're doing various sadhanas together, individually, or different aspects of one person doing the sadhanas, so that the goddess descends, or they have a theophany, they have an encounter with the goddess, with the divine, right? And then so that the demons are destroyed, right? So we can also take it. I have referred to the Devi Gita and the Devi Bhagavatam as sadhana shastra, and for a couple of reasons. One, we've used that term before talking about mantra shastra and the like. Here I mean sadhana shastra in two ways. One, it's going to give sadhana. It's going to describe something. The Devi herself will speak different sadhanas, and so far the last 4 or 5 verses and 3-4 weeks have been describing different types of sadhana. It's describing sadhanas, instructing sadhanas, but it's also a story of sadhana. This can be taken. This is how we also interpret the Devi Mahatmyam, right? Our kind of presentation of it. And this is my presentation of this story also, is the story of sadhana, right? We do all these types of sadhanas. There are various types of sadhanas. There's various intentions, so that the Divine Mother, so we can know and experience the Divine Mother. What is the fruit of that experience? So we can request her to incarnate. When she incarnates, the lower tendencies, the asuras, Tarakasura and all his cohorts, are destroyed or purified or removed or cleaned. The language, according to the story, the language is going to be different. In this story, he's going to be killed by her offspring. So when the Devi arrives, she also gives birth. What does she give birth to? She gives birth to Ganesha and to Kartikeya and to Ayappa, right? And like this, each one of them represent different aspects of sadhana. Kartikeya is going to be very heroic and forceful, and I mean, he has his whole reservoir of important meaning, which we won't go into, because last week I only did half a verse, and I want to at least finish a verse and a half today, so I don't want to get too off. Let's look at our verses. Let me share a screen here. Okay, you can see that? I think so, yeah. So this is the verse we were on last week. I'll read the previous verse also. Some gods were fully, we'll go 2 verses. Yeah, okay. Some gods were fully absorbed in meditation. Others were focused on her name. Some concentrated on her hymns, while others were intent upon reciting her names. We discussed those. And then the last, this is verse 24 of chapter 1, Devi Gita. Mantra-pārāyaṇa-parāḥ, kecit, kṛcchrādi-kāriṇaḥ. That's the verse. That's the half verse we talked last week. Some were devoted to chanting mantras, mantra-pārāyaṇa, and others were practicing painful or severe or difficult austerity. We spent most of the last meeting, talking about the nature of tapasya, and then we used the Bhagavad Gita, chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, to describe different types of tapasya that Krishna describes. Tapasya of speech, of mind and body, and those are also according to the 3 gunas. That fits nicely to the Devi Bhagavatam, Devi Gita's presupposed themes. Ma herself will speak very similar things in the text itself, right? So that's why we spent a little time mostly looking at the Gita, just as a way, if we were to take this as sadhana shastra, encouraging us to do sadhana, right, and us to do maybe even something a little bit difficult, some difficult practice. How do we move forward? So we looked at the Gita as inspiration and clarification on moving forward in tapasya, austerity. Although they described it as they were doing actually painful austerity, so they were doing some difficult, very difficult things. So second half of the verse, antaryāga-parāḥ, kecit, nyāsa-parāyaṇāḥ. So again, this paraya, remember we, in the last 4 verses or 4 or 5 verses, it's playing with kecit, that's repeating. Some are doing this, some others are doing this, yet others are doing this. And it was pārāyaṇa and parāyaṇa. Pārāyaṇa means with attention and focus and concentration and passion. And pārāyaṇa is to recite something from beginning to end, like a text or a group of names, sahasrama, like that. So here, antaryāga-parāḥ. Some were absorbed, this is translations from Mackenzie Brown, some were absorbed in mental sacrifices. Antaryāga or yaga. Let me get my notes here. And others, kecit, some were doing that, and yet others were doing nyāsa-parāyaṇa, were focused, parāyaṇa, right, on nyasa. Nyasa, he's described it as implanted, right? Should have wrote implanting, or no, implanted is past tense, implanted mystic powers in their bodies. So that should be fun. How do you implant mystic powers in your body? We'll get there. Let's start with mental sacrifice first. If you remember a few weeks ago, at the beginning of this, when the gods first gathered, I'll look at that verse here. I'll go to that verse. It's important enough. Amba yagna vidhara, that the gods first, they performed the mother amba yagna. This is a reference again to the amba yagna. Knowing well her so many rights. If you remember, I read a whole section from the third third skanda or canto of the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam about the Agna Yagna, that it can be done sattvically, rajasically, and tamasically. Again, that 3 gunas, and it can also be done mentally, right? Let's see. Sattvic. So yeah, I'll go back. I don't want to get lost reading a whole nother chapter and go back to I have to be disciplined. It's painful. It's a painful discipline for me to stay on topic. That's my big tapasya. It described that actually some perform that you can perform this. You can do the amba yagna mentally, imagining. It can be, and we sometimes call here, it's called antaryaga, internal sacrifice, or manasa yagya, mental sacrifice. In puja, we call it manasa puja. We do the mental worship. We do, you can do, and it can be done 2 ways. One is that it's just that everything is imagined internally. Everything is imagined rather than done externally. Like if you're going to offer a flower, you first imagine offering a flower, and then you offer a flower. right? That's one method of manasa puja, right? And in that method, it's harder to do because you can pick up a flower with or without concentration, without mental purity, without devotion, right? Without a mental discipline, the discipline of clear thinking and internal thinking, by just picking up. I don't have a flower here, but imagine there's a flower. I can do this at the ganda pushpe, and Ma here was this fragrant flower. I worship you. But to do it mentally, even just to imagine it, requires a lot of concentration, right? You have to think what's a flower, how the flower, which flower is going to be out of all flowers, right? And so it's said that externally our puja may be very simple, because maybe we're poor and we can't afford expensive offerings. We can't afford, we maybe offer it on a leaf and put a piece of the fruit that were on sale that we found, some flowers from outside, and we put it on a leaf or on a paper plate or on a simple brass plate that we inherited from our family, we bought at an Indian store or something. But when you do it mentally, right, it can be a perfect flower. It can be a lotus with fragrance. It can be, you can offer food. It doesn't have to be a small plate of raisins and nuts. It can be 108 courses of the most opulent food cooked in pure vessels, right? You can offer a seat of a jewel encrusted throne, right? You can So I'm Swami Shivananda Saraswati. He mentioned from Rishikesh. He says some of us. He has a book on where he talked about. He said the science and the science and art of murti worship or idol worship or something like that, where he's describing some of these things, where he says that mentally, like we're so miserly that even mentally we offer a little plate of food this big and a few little plates of flowers. We can mentally offer all the flowers in the world, right? So but it's not, but actually to do that, or the most beautiful flower, the most fragrant incense, or the most pure food, delicious food, but it's still, we should offer the best. At least mentally we can offer the best, but it's still not easy. We have to imagine it. That requires a type of mental purity, of concentration and ability to visualize. So there's training for that also. To be absorbed, to do puja internally or mentally is actually very difficult. It's more difficult, right? And sometimes to do, like I told you in Kali Puja, we do here at Kali Mandir, as per Tantra Shastra, the puja that we do externally, we also do mentally first. We'll get to that momentarily, but why that is. But mentally, it takes longer than physically. Physically it can be done and take a few seconds, but mentally you have to set yourself up and internalize your mind and visualize where it is and how you're doing it, right? So it's not that easy. So that's one type of manasa puja or antaryāga or manasa puja. Another type, which is more on the tantric side, right, is where all the offerings are done not just internally by imagining it, right, but the offerings themselves are internal objects, right? The objects are tattvas, are the elements, are aspect of our consciousness, aspect of our body. An example of this, right? Like there's in classical temple worship, we worship the deity with 16, it's called sadachad, sarupachad, 16 offerings. So we offer a seat, we offer a seat to sit, we offer water we wash the deity's feet. We treat the deity as an invited guest primarily. It's using that form of service. As a most respected guest, a VIP guest, you offer these items that you'd offer traditionally in high culture of an invited guest. You wash their feet, you offer arghya, which is a special offering in their hand. You give water to rinse their mouth, you feed them, right? You want water for rinse your mouth. You offer a sweet drink, you rinse your mouth again, you bathe them, you dry them, you offer, you give them cloth to wear and jewelry and perfumes and makeup and auspicious things like that, whatever like that. Then you offer incense and flowers, incense and light and flowers and fragrance, right? And then food And then also the other forms of service, you offer an umbrella, you fan them, right? You offer garlands and handfuls of flowers, right? In goddess worship, then there'd be sacrifices, there'd be offering of japa, you do special japa and hymns, and then pranam. This is a way that the deity, once the deity is invoked, this is what the 16 plus offerings are. Mentally, we can do all those things mentally. All the things we do physically, we can do mentally. But then more tantrically, as per our tradition, we offer what's the seat. We don't just imagine. I can imagine one method, okay, in the temple, Ma sits on a throne in the temple. So I can imagine, oh, Ma sits on her throne in the temple. I can close my eyes and visualize her on the throne. That's very powerful, right? Internally, I can do something a little bit more intimate, more closer to the self, is I can offer my heart as her seat, not just visualize mentally. So it's not just mental worship, it's internal mental worship. Not just imagining her in her, I could also imagine her sitting on a Sri Yantra in the highest heaven and Manidweep. Or I can mention that Sri Yantra within the heart or on top of the head. That's what I mean by a little, it's a more, I think this verse is like the antad. It's not just mental, it's internal, right? And so an example, I'm going to give you in just form a few, I'm not going to chant them, but we actually chant this every day in puja, and then we're supposed to visualize it. A few verses taken from, I think it's Mahanirvana Tantra or Kulanavara Tantra, one of these texts where the verses really come from. It says, imagine, before doing external work, we're supposed to do it mentally. So imagine an infinite ocean of nectar, amrita, right? So that's the infinite ocean of nectar, Satchitananda of nectar, right? Within that ocean, there is a island of precious gems. Those gems are Chintamani gems, wish-fulfilling gems, right? Within that island, in the middle of that island, there is a tree. That tree is a wish-fulfilling tree, Kalpa-vriksha, right? So underneath that tree, we visualize the Divine Mother or the deity that we're worshiping, right? And then so that we visualize, so she's there. Now we have to offer her a seat. So we offer the lotus, the Hridoy Padma, the lotus of the heart, as her seat. So now that you've seated her, you're supposed to wash her feet. So where do you get water for wash your feet? Well, it turns out the top of the head, there is constantly dripping amrita, right, from the 1,000-petal lotus, right? So that water is, we all collect that water and we wash our feet. And we collect that amrita, that amrita comes in the union of Shiva and Shakti. This is the result of their union. That amrita dripping, we also offer for rinsing her mouth, right? Then what do? Then we have to bathe her. Well, we have water again. We have 1,000-petal lotus with 1,000 petals dripping 1,000 showers of nectar. So that water, we give her a full shower and bathe her, right? So then we have to dress her. What do we dress her with? Or we don't dress. So we have, after bathing, we what do we offer what should we offer? We should offer a fragrance. We're supposed to offer perfume. So what's the fragrance? Well, fragrance comes from flowers. Flowers comes from the earth. So perfume represents the earth element. So we are made up of 5 elements: earth, fire, water, air, and space, right? So our prithvi tattva, our earth element, we offer as fragrance, right? Then what about a flower? We have to offer flowers. So the flower offering, itaganda idam sajana pushpam, with this fragrant flower, touch with sandalwood paste. What's the flower? We offer the mind as a flower, right? We offer the mind, the intellect, and mind as flowers, as argya, right? We can offer incense. What about incense? So we offer the 5 prana as incense, right? So we have, you can imagine, I can imagine 5 incense sticks and do the mental puja, right? Or I can literally try it. It's not that easy because I don't know what my 5 pranas, how do I offer prana as incense? It becomes very internal, very intimate. We offer the 5 pranas as sticks of incense, right? Then we offer, what about light or lamp? We offer tejas tattvam, agni, the element of fire, right? The elemental nature of fire as light. Then we have to feed her. What do we feed her? Remember Om Namas Chandikaya, I mentioned that the Chandika, the goddess, is a meat-eating goddess. She eats flesh, right? So we give her our own, we put her on top of a head, right? And we offer to eat. We offer our own mind, or the purified mind. It says Mana Shuddhi, as food. We offer our own purified mind as food. Drink, that whole ocean of nectar we imagined, right? That we offer as our drink. So that's very nice. What about then one of the offerings is you give over a queen or a king, a royalty, you hold a royal umbrella. What is that umbrella? Turns out we have one built in. The stick of that umbrella is a spine, and the umbrella is the 1,000-petal lotus, right? And what about music? We offer the essence of sound as hymns and music, as raga and raginis, the essence of the sound tattva, right? We have to fan her. How do we fan her? By the essence of air and wind, or the fan, or the chamras, right? And we also, one of the things that there's a 16-item worship, there's a 64-item worship. In the 64-item worship during festivals, you're supposed to also do a dance performance. So remember, we can imagine dancers, apsaras and the Gandharvas playing music and dancing, or we can create them or pull them from ourselves, which are also only her, right? So what's that? The verse is, well, this is my favorite line in the Manasa Puja translation. It says that you offer the unsteady and fickle nature of the mind as a dance performance. Our mind is always moving. It's never steady, never focused, right? That itself is for her entertainment. That our mind is constantly dancing. How wonderful that is. We're always struggling to control the mind. Well, if it's controlled, great. If it's not controlled, I hope she enjoys the dance, right? And then it describes offering garlands and handfuls of flowers for the elimination and each flower is like the non-envy, non-lust, non-delusion, non-confusion, non-ego, right? And then it says ahimsa parama pushpam indriya-graha jnana pushpam daya pushpam kshama pushpam cha panchapam. Something, there's a mantra, I'm not fresh in my mind, but it translates as, right? We offer, it describes 10 different types of flower offerings, and then 5 more. And these 5, the supreme flower of nonviolence. So these are virtues. We offer flowers of eradication of vices, non-envy, and we offer 5 flowers, which are the flowers of virtues, which is nonviolence, right? Sense control, ahimsa para jnana pushpam, wisdom, jnana pushpam, daya pushpam, compassion, and kshama pushpam, forgiveness, right? These are the 5 ultimate. So these are, in other words, not just imagining flowers that represent something. These are the flowers. This is antaryāga. These are, this is grafted onto the temple worship, where we're imagining a goddess and worshiping. This could be what they're doing. Or if it's literally offering fire, then the fire, that's also given. The fire is kundalini. The ghee being dripped is idam, pingala, and shashun. There's all ways you can understand, all kinds of different ways you can understand this antaryāga. So as per the Devi Bhagavatam's, the 3rd book, manasa puja or antaryāga or manasa yagya, the purpose of it is, the only purpose of it is liberation, right? If you want to get other boons, you do different types of puja, right? As described, especially sattvic puja was good concentration, right? The manasa puja, the fruit of that is ultimate liberation, is jiva mukta, becoming liberated while living. That's the goal, right? So the fact that some gods are doing some things and some gods are doing other things, or we can think of it, parts of us of us can do one thing, but other parts of us should do antaryāga, right? Meaning that whatever our motivation for spiritual practice, right, we shouldn't forget the ultimate goal of liberation. Remember, we have in the classic Purushartha, we have dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, right? Dharma, which is legitimate, wonderful, a righteous, religious living in this life, right, in this world. Kama, satisfying our desires. Artha, satisfying our economic needs and prosperity for us and our family, right? But we shouldn't forget moksha. right? Antaryāga is ultimately for moksha. That is what the texts say. And so even in every temple, in every puja, even our little tiny simple Kali puja booklet, we give a very simple way of doing because the simple puja, we give the external puja simple. So the internal puja is correspondingly simple. When we do very complicated external pujas, the corresponding internal puja also becomes more elaborate, right? And but even you have that little book, a little simple Kali puja will have a mental worship, a real simple version of the mental worship. And that's done, of course, because there's many reasons. And tantric tradition is that first we worship inside, worship outside. But part of the meaning, the express purpose also is that by doing internally, slowly, when we get the internal puja right, if we see the Divine Mother and we're offering every aspect of our being that's hers and her back to her, that's the same as illumination. That is Jivamukta. That is the ultimate goal. So maybe we can't do it yet, but we can visualize, we can pretend, we can practice, right? We can practice. So the daily antaryāga or manasa puja is practice. When we get it right, then our other external mantras and other practices, then the other goals that are the purposes and motivations and fruits of various sadhanas that we're doing or that can be done, their real goal ultimately will be satisfied with the final goal, right? So I think there's a lot here in the antaryāga-parāḥ. They were absorbed. They're absorbed. Each one of these, they're absorbed in. They're absorbed in practicing this and absorbed in doing this and absorbed in doing this. So that's an important point. That's some lesson, because perhaps, once again, not wanting to project, right? But we do sadhanas, right? And the results of our sadhana isn't the appearance of an infinite pillar of light, right? That turns into a beautiful goddess, right? Maybe it is. I hope it is. I don't want to think. I sincerely pray. I always joke to all of our devotees, if that happens, make sure you mention me to her, because because it's not happening here. But if it happens there, please mention that old Swami at Kali Mandir. Please, he has a few things to talk about, right? But so it could be, I think, the fact that I don't know, I haven't counted, but I think at least 8-9 times in these 3-4 verses, the word parāḥ is mentioned, with concentration or with dedication or with actually, it's not even dedication, a better word is absorption. Whatever sadhana they're doing, right? They're absorbed in it. They're absorbed in japa. They're absorbed in chanting, recitation. They're absorbed in this worship. They're absorbed in difficult practices. They're absorbed in, each one of them, parāḥ, 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 right? So I think that's an important point. We need to be absorbed in whatever the practice, right? It could be simple, it could be complicated, right? But it should be some full absorption. I think that's the important part. So then kecit, while others do something else. Nyasa-parāyaṇa, they do nyasa. Parāyaṇa also they're absorbed in nyasa. Others so here he translated implanted mystic powers into their body. So I think nyasa can be coupled a little bit. I mean, all these sadhanas there's nama parāyaṇa, there's nama-pārāyaṇa, nama-pārāyaṇa, absorption in name and focused on reciting groups of names. There is mantra-pārāyaṇa-parāḥ. There's absorption in hymns and reciting. So almost all, if not all, maybe all of them, except severe austerities. I don't know this painful austerities, whether this is necessarily mantra, but almost everything mentioned is dealing with mantras, right? So they're engaged in mantra sadhana primarily, right? You can imagine almost everything there is connected to mantras and japa and recitation. So this nyasa is fully in the tradition of mantra sadhana. The science of nyasa is given, especially in the tantras, right? The word nyasa means, it has a couple meanings. They're related. We'll see how they're related. One is that you could say is to consecrate, right? Or another word is to implant. So to consecrate is to, when you make something holy, is like we've placed Kali, an image of Kali, living image of Kali in the temple. The temple is considered a consecrated space, and the image where prana has been invoked into the goddess, it's a consecrated image. We use that language, right? So that's one idea, but it's also the idea of placing. So here he used the word implanted or implanting, right? Nyasa also means to leave. That's where you get the crossover, to leave something. You look at, so if I put something someplace, if I put a Kali image in a temple, or a priest puts prana or consciousness in a murti, right? He's left it there, right? So therefore that has become consecrated, right? So that nyasa also means to leave. We get a similar word in sannyasa, right? So sannyasa means and there's many ways to pull apart words, but the general understanding, san means completely, right? And nyasa means to leave. So sannyasi is somebody who leaves everything. So you have that word, who renounces everything. We use that in a negative term, renounces everything, right? So that same word is there. So nyasa is not exact. So it comes to that same idea of leaving. So what are we leaving? What are we placing? How are we consecrating? What are we here? Even more peculiar, implanting, right? We're implanted. He says mystic powers. Usually this means mystic. This means mantras. Let me double check what Swami Bhajanananda translates. Okay. Sorry, in case he gives some new insight, he just gave us a standard translation. So what is being, so usually this is nyasa. So you can implant mantras in different parts of the body, right? Right. You can implant or deities into the parts of the body, also usually via mantra, right? You can implant syllables or sounds into the body. An example, I'm going to get out of my notes here and look at my puja notes. My puja, now I'm going to the daily puja at Kali Mandir. I have it on my iPad here, my cheat sheet when I'm sitting. So I'll give you an example of different types of nyasa. So one is pita nyasa. So within the heart, remember we imagine the seat of the deity to be the heart. So we have the seat externally in the temple where Ma sits, and we have the seat internally in the heart. So there's all kinds of Shaktis in her seat, right? And those Shaktis are also, therefore, have to be first invoked in our body, in the heart, and then invoked externally. We could do nyasa externally of the shrine, of the seat. An example, I'll just give a few, quickly as it goes through them as an example. Pitta devatabhyo namaha, pitta shakti-bhyo namaha. Pitta means seat, right? Devatabhyo, all the deities, I worship all the deities of the seat. I worship shakti-bhyo, all the shaktis, their consorts or the energies of the seat. That's simple. We do that. We go mrim pitta devatabhyo namaha, shakti-bhyo namaha, right? That's the simple puja. And more elaborate pujas we do usually daily here. There's a longer version, or at least on Amavasya and special occasions, right? Adhara-shaktaye namaha, pakritye namaha, om kurmaye namaha, om anantaye namaha, pravitye namaha, shuraburaye namaha, om mani-dvipaye namaha, om chintamani grihaye namaha, om smashanalaye namaha, om parajitaye namaha, kappa vikshaye namaha, vedikaye namaha, ratnasimhasanaye namaha. We'll stop there. They go on. What are they? We worship, this is Adhara Shakti, the powers that uphold, right? Pakritye, we worship Pakriti. So we worship and we place, we're both worshiping and placing, right? We can't worship which is not there, but either we recognize it's there or we're placing it there. We're actually, that's why it says implanting. We worship Pakriti, Kurmaya Namaha, the tortoise that holds up the earth, that's going to hold up our heart, right? Our seat. Anantaya Namaha, the 1,000-petaled the thousand-hooded serpent on which which the universe sits. Prithviye namaha, the earth element, or the earth itself. Shuddham Buddhaye namaha. In order to imagine all this, you have to have a pure mind. So the pure Shuddha Buddha, the pure intellect, the purified mind, we have to invoke, right? Mani Dvipaya namaha. Then remember I gave that whole meditation in an ocean of nectar. We imagine a island of gems, and then a wish-fulfilling tree, and on top of, so this is exactly that. We're in that ocean of nectar, Mani Dvipaya, island of gems, Chintamani Grihayanama, a wish-fulfilling tree, or wish-fulfilling jewels, Smashanaya namaha, a cremation ground, right? Because Ma is in the cremation ground, especially these mantras are specific for Kali. They'll be specific to different deities. Kalpa Vrikshana, wish-fulfilling tree. Mani Vedikaya namaha, an altar made of gems. Ratna Simhasanaya namaha, right? So Rakta Simhasanaya namaha. So sometimes it's actually, I said it wrong, because in other versions is Ratna Simhasanaya, a throne made of gems, right? But for Kali, it's Rakta Simhasanaya namaha, a throne made of blood. This, of course, is the heart, right? It's also very interesting, right? Mani Pitaya namaha, a seat made of jewels, right? It goes on like this. There's all kinds of Shaktis that are invoked, right? I'll give you, I just got to read a few in English. We worship righteousness, knowledge, renunciation, opulence, unrighteousness, ignorance, attachment, and infamy, the unlimited, a lotus, a mass of bliss, embodiment of Prakriti, the self, the supreme self, the inner self, the knowledge self, will, knowledge, action, desire, the grantor desire. All these things are, it's called the Pita Nyasa, right? That's one type of Nyasa that's done in puja. So they're doing such pujas, such practices, right? Then there's also called Nyasa. This is, we've talked about this when we talked about Purusharana, the opening of these group of verses about the preliminary acts. And I mentioned, I recited a Viniyoga mantra that describes the sage, the meter, the deity, the bija of a mantra, right? So that's called, and so we can do like an example, Om Asya Mataga Mantrasya Brahma Richihi Gayatri Chandaha Savitra Devata, so for the alphabet, Saraswati is the deity, Brahma is the rishi, something like that, right? So we can do nyasa of that. All those details, right? We can place them. We place Brahma at the top of the head. We place Saraswati in the mouth. And we put Gayatri in the lips. We put Saraswati in the heart. We put the consonants in the syllables, and we create her. We embody and we place all those deities, all those aspects of the deity, all those aspects of the mantra in our body, in the either of the alphabet or of the deity being worshipped. So I'll give an example of for Kali. Kring asya mantika mantrasya Bhairava Rishi Ushnik Chandaha Sima Dakshina Kalika Yoy Devata Kring Bijam Hun Shakti Kring Kilakam Purusharat Tasastre Yogaha. So first is the mantra. For the mantra Kring, which is a bij mantra we'll talk about momentarily for educational purposes only, right? Usually we don't say these things out loud except in puja, but for this particular mantra, Bhairava is the Rishi, Ushnik is the meter, Dakshina Kali is the deity, Hrim is the seed, Hum is the Shakti, Krim is the pin, and its use is to attain the 4 goals of life. Then we do Nyasa, Om Bhairavaya Rishenama, we place Bhairava here, or we worship Bhairava here. Om Ushnik Chandasaye Namaha, we worship the meter, Ushnik. Sri Dakshina Kalika Devataye Namaha, we worship the deity Kalika in the heart, right? Hring Bija Namaha, we worship the bija Hring in the genitals. Hum Shakti Namaha, the Shakti Hum at the base of the spine. Kring in the pin in the navel. We discussed those things some weeks ago, right? But then, so that's good. We're embodied. Now we take the mantra itself and place it, called Anga Nyasa. Anga, these are anguli, these are fingers. These are in the fingers of the hand. And I'm sorry, Kara Nyasa. Anga means limb, but anguli means fingers. got it confused in my mouth. Kara nyasa means in the hands, and anga nyasa means in the limbs, anga, right? Kramagustabhyama, Krim Taravyam, Krum, Madimabhyamasham, Krayamanami, Kavyam, Kram, Kanishtabhyam, Om Krak Karatara Pishta Brahmastrata, Om Kram Ram, Krinshita Swaha, Kurunshikayam, Kraim Kavachayam, Kram. So like this, you place their mantras are placed on the fingers of the hands. Why on the hands? Of course, the hands represent the five, they represent the body, 5 limbs, right? Head, you imagine, remember the Michelangelo character. You see him as a star, the human body, like that. Also, the fingers represent different elements, and those represent different chakras. An example, let me see if I can remember. So pinky is water, earth element, which is 2nd chakra. Ring finger is earth, right? Muladhara, right? Middle finger is space. We've talked about this in our subtle anatomy course, right? Or Vishuddha chakra, right? This is air, right? Which is the Anahata chakra, right? And this is fire, right? The navel chakra, right? So by placing mantras on the 5 hands, it purifies and spiritualizes and charges or consecrates the 5 limbs of the body, but also the 5 elements in the body, and therefore the primary chakras in the body, right? And then we do heart, head, tuft of the sika, kavacha means a shield, netraya, the eyes, and the different directions, right? These are the anganyasa, karanyasa, and anganyasa, right? There's all kinds of other nyasas. There's also we can do nyasa of the alphabet, right? This is an example of nyasa of a bij mantra, right? There's anga nyasa, there's nyan of the alphabet. So each syllable of the alphabet goes om, the complete sound, right? Differentiates into 54 sounds, right? Of the Sanskrit alphabet, right? Each one of those sounds also has a place in the chakras in our system. So we can worship each and awaken each sound in the body in their appropriate places, or place them there as nyasa. An example, nama ana ina ina una una reem 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 aim kanma kanma kam kam cham cham cham. You can go through the various, or even nama ana ina una 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 to the 16 syllables, 16 vowels in the 16 petals of the throat chakra, right? You can go through the different, so on the outside of the body, in the namaha im nama im agustavyarma kam im cham 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 chanam im. He mentioned various collections of syllables into the limbs, into the fingers, into the limbs, into the chakras, into different parts in the external part of the body. All this is nyasa. This is what they're doing. So this is a ancient tradition, right? And it's especially popular in tantra, right? So we can almost call it a tantric, maybe it can be boldly declared a tantric practice. I used to think of it this way, because I understand the significance and meanings and rationale for it primarily from tantric perspective, right? I can't say, I have to refresh my memory a little bit. Maybe we talked about this in our other course, but whether or not, how much nyasa is in Vedic texts and things like that. But it's definitely in tantric texts. And the fact that here it's in a Purana, and it's mentioned in Puranas, because the Puranas are, at least this Purana especially, Devi Bhagavad Purana, is assuming knowledge of Tantra, right? It's going to quote Tantra a lot and even describe the tantric method of worship like that. So this is an example of tantric worship and tantric practice, right? The idea that the one sound, you have to think, what is it? The one sound becomes all sounds, and those sounds then rejoin to create different types of pure and powerful sounds as bij mantras, which will be our next verse, talking about bij mantras, and different sounds like different holy sound. Every sound is made of syllables, right? And every mantra is made of sounds, right? And so there's many things that are happening, and I don't want to be, problem is that anything I say, I don't want to cheapen the whole science of and significance of nyasa, right? I have to, because we only have a short amount of time, just skim for the sake of our discussion, right? I will, in our Google Classroom page, post a talk I gave on Nyasa specifically as part of our introduction to Kali Puja lectures. I gave like 40 something lectures or something. And I gave one dealing with the different types of nyasa that are done in puja, as well as some of the tantric theories and that goes to support that understanding. So I'll post an hour and 20-minute lecture class given in the temple room. I'll post it. So if you want, and if those who aren't part of the course, if you look on the Kali Mandir YouTube page, if you find under it's listed under where this gathering, what is it, a playlist? There's a playlist for the Kali Puja, introduction to Kali Puja. So it's on there titled Nyasa or something like that, different types of Nyasa. So I don't want to, I already given that class, I don't want to give that lecture all over again and then fall behind, not get to the next verse, which I'm already behind. It's already 8 o'clock. I'm already behind and haven't got to the next verse. So my point perfectly described. So but one thing we can think of it, just a real simple way we can think of it, right, is it's completely, it transforms. One of the things it does, it can do, it transforms and redefines our body. In puja, we talked about in the past Bhuta-shuddhi in our other course, right? Bhuta-shuddhi is internal method of purification, where theoretically the body, at least in our imagination, but maybe actually our physical body and astral body and subtle body are burned up. And well, where we have an imaginative union of the Jiva Shiva with Padma Shiva, the whole process. And then we come back into a body that's gone. So we have to rebuild her body. And we rebuild her body with mantras, right? So in other words, we're replacing our normal conception of our body being a physical covering, skin covered, covering muscle, covering bone and veins and blood and arteries and our physicality, right? We remove that from our mind and replace it with mantras, right? And it says in the Mahalakshmastakam, the 8 verses to Mother Lakshmi from Narada Purana, I believe, right? It says, Siddhi Buddhi Pradevi Bhukti Mukti Pradayani Mantra Murti Saradevi Mahalakshmi Namastate. Mantra Murti Saradevi, O Goddess Lakshmi, your form, Murti Sada, Mantra Murti Sada, your form is always made of mantra. Her body is mantric. Our body is physical, her body is mantric. So, but actually, our body is her body. This whole universe is her body. This whole universe is her vibration. This whole universe is mantric. We see body, but really it's vibration, right? And so we purify, we awaken, we enliven, we tune, we connect with, we replace, we create her body, right, made of mantra, and then the goddess herself worships herself ultimately. Only a god can worship a god. There's a famous mantra. Only a diamond can cut diamonds. Only a devata can worship a devata. So we're out of the way. Our body is gone, is replaced, or imagined, or awakened as the god, as the goddess, the body of the deity. There's other reasons also. There's tuning and getting everything right, and there's all kinds of stuff going on with nyasa. But I'll tell you, there's a verse from I think it's from the Mahanirmana Tantra. I can't picture the page right now, but I remember the verse. But it says, from abundance of nyasa comes abundant fruit in puja, right? So from abundance, from properly done, from lots of nyasa and properly done nyasa, puja becomes fruitful, because only then, only the goddess can worship the goddess, right? And so and the way we transform our body into the goddess's body subtly and energy is through nyasa. This is the tantric method of doing this. So we'll leave it at that. Although there's way cooler things to say. So we'll finish with this verse because I definitely want to get to this verse. It's only half a verse more, and then the closing verse. Let me open my notes again. I'm off my, okay. Hrillekayā parā-śakteḥ pūjāṃ cakrur-atandritāḥ. Hrillekayā. So they did something with the Hrillekha, right? So here he's translated a mantra known as Hrillekha. So the mantra is not given. And so this is a point of spiritual etiquette that I think we should learn, people should learn, especially on Facebook and the like, where we'll be speaking these things a little bit openly for the sake of education. So we give the disclaimer, educational use only, don't try this, you know. But generally speaking, mantras are not spoken, especially certain types of mantras, bij mantras especially, right, are not spoken except, they're not spoken out loud except if they're done in pujas where mantras are spoken out loud, right? They're not, and they're usually not even written down. So most texts will say, instead of telling you a mantra, it'll give you a code for a mantra, right? And for the sake of education, an example is say vak bija, right? Vak bija is the mantra, the seed sound of speech, or Saraswati. That mantra is ain. Or kriya bija, the mantra of action, that is, or kalika bija, right? That mantra is cream. Or kama bija, the mantra for desire, right? So it's a clean, different mantras like that. So Hrillekha is a code word for the mantra Hrim, right? H-R-I long I-M, right? And so it will be spoken openly a few verses later. That's why I'm not feel too nervous about speaking it, right? The goddess will speak it. Or the gods will speak it in it will be, and it's still hidden within a line, but that habit is there, is not right. So better, rather than writing it as your in a Facebook post, right, you can actually say, you can call it the Hrillekha mantra, or the Maya bija, also known as the Maya bija, right, the bija of Maya, right? It's also known as the Hridaya bija. Hridaya means heart, right? Right. Like that. Usually these are the terms that it's usually known for, right? Hrillekha. So Hrillekha means, lekha means like a line, right? A line or mark or scratch. Hri, you know that word Hri means, Hridaya means heart, right? So Hrillekha is a mantra that's a scratch in the heart, or a line in the heart, or engraved in the heart, or there's so many ways to understand that, right? Carved in the heart, you know, like this, right? One thing about bij mantras, we've talked a little bit about them in the past, so I don't want to completely repeat, but bij mantras are sounds that they don't have a normal word meaning, right? They're maybe we call them in linguistics, I think there's a term, natural sounds, that the sound is the thing that it sounds like. You know, it's a sound of a thing, or a sound of an emotion, rather than a word that points to an object or an emotion or an action, right? It's the sound of an action, of a person or deity, an action, emotion, intention, like that, an element like that. So for instance, the elements also have sound. Ram, R short AM, is a mantra for fire, right? It's not the word fire, it's the sound of fire. It's a vibration. It's considered more fire than fire. It's a sound that makes fire, the sound that is fireness, the element of fire. So this Hrillekha mantra, or Maya bija, or Hrillekha bija, or Hridaya bija, it's the sound of and in this text, in the Devi Bhagavatam, it is a supreme sound of Bhuvaneshwari, right? So another thing could also be known as Bhuvaneshwari bija, right? Where the Devi herself will say later, all my worship is to be done with the sound Hrim, or the Hrillekha mantra. It is called the the Devi's Pranava mantra. Pranava is a code name again for Om. We now say Om very cheaply. Even, it's like we have it, in traditional cultures, even Om is not said out loud. It's a meditation, it's a Vedic mantra, right? There's people in tantric traditions where your authority to chant mantras is initiation. So they'll give you a mantra with a beach mantra, but not Om, because maybe you're not from a Brahmin family that can chant Om. But you're a tantric initiation, you can chant Hrim, the example, right? Even Om is not chanted out loud. It's usually said Pranava mantra, right? The mantra of prana, there's many meanings of the word pranava, but it usually means that from which life and energy comes from, right? Pranava mantra, right? So just like Om is for Brahman, Pranava is for Brahman, or the Torah says as Pranava is for Brahman, Hrillekha mantra or Maya Bija is for Devi or for Bhuvaneshwari. So as Om is for Brahman, Hrim is for Devi or for Bhuvaneshwari. So this text is going to have Hrim throughout. So here it's stating that, and this is the last thing that's described before Ma appears, right? So this is the culmination, is all the practices we're getting for their concentrated meditation and worship using the beach mantra, right? So these sounds, they're not always obvious how they come. And some would hold that they're meaningless sounds, there's even a term I'm forgetting, there's a term used in like magical, academic analysis of magical incantation to things like that, where some sounds are just nonsense sounds, but they're believed to have power, right? So this would, in the category, these are sounds that don't have any clear meaning like that, but they have power. That's one understanding. But then Swami Shivananda writes in one of his books, in the Japa Yoga book, he says people are not apt. No, that's not true. Arthur Avalon, Sir John Woodruff writes in his Principles of Tantra, people are not apt to dedicate their lives to meaningless things. They have meaning. You simply don't know them. You're not initiated to know their meaning. The meanings are there. So the tantrics have gone out of the way to describe intricate meanings of each sound that goes to make up the composite sounds that go to compose the beach sound. I'll mention some of those momentarily for Hrim. Also, there's one way is like, it's the essence, a beach mantra is the essence of a word sometimes. Like, I'll give you an example. The beach mantra for, I'm going to give you some secret things for Radha. So Radha is an esoteric Shakti of Devi, right, of Krishna, and therefore she's also worshipped with this Hrillekha mantra. That's one of her mantras, right? But it says, but also her mantra is Ram, because the first letter of her name, Radhika, so the essence, that vibration that goes to create her name, the seed that creates her name, is the first letter. So Ram, so Radhika, Ram Radhikāya-namaha, an example. Or for Prahlad, the first letter of Prahlad Maharaj, the boy devotee of Narasingha, right, is pra, right? Prahlad. So pram. So pra, the first sound with Chandra Bindu, which is the M with a dot, that and then a nasalized tracing, how it's pronounced, becomes. So similarly, this is a mantra for the heart, right? Hridaya. The first sound of Hridaya is Hri, and therefore Hri with Chandra Bindu becomes Hrim. So I just given you how the word is, how this particular mantra has been composed, right? So in the Tantra Shastra and Mantra Shastra, as I said, they every word, every sound that goes to, they think it is not meaningless, but the meaning is esoteric. So they create, or have to be careful about that, or either they create meaning, they assign meaning. That's one thing that tantrics can do. We assign meaning to things. Tantrics and scholars and sadhus, and something that has something, we assign meaning to it, or we learn that, or the meaning's passed down. So either the meaning has been assigned to each letter, or through meditation they learn the meaning, or maybe it's been passed down in tantras, in Tantra Shastra by Parvati to Shiva or Shiva to Parvati. I don't exactly remember, to be honest, but I know all the main beach mantras we use in our puja book, we've done research for them and have given their composite sounds. So the mantra Hrim, the graphic is the mantra written in Sanskrit, right? Within the Shakti triangle. I thought it was very beautiful. Good thing to meditate. You can get the Shakti of it, just the visual of it, of the mantra, not just the sound. The visual is very powerful. But it's made of different, the sound is made of different letters. What are the letters? Ha, Ra, E, Nga. These are the letters that make up the mantra Hrim. Ha. What does Ha mean? I'll give you the key. I'll give you the key. Tantra has lots of keys where words mean something different, mean something specifically, or sounds mean something. Ha means Shiva, right? In this understanding. Ra, that's the Ha sound, the H. The R, Ra, means Prakriti, nature, right? This divine manifestation, right? E, the long I in the Hrim, right, means satisfaction or contentment, right? The M, the labial M, right, means apara Brahman. Apara Brahman means the manifest Brahman. There's para Brahman and apara Brahman. Para Brahman is a supreme Brahman beyond manifestation. Para Brahman is manifested Brahman as a world of name and form. Para Brahman means also the Vedas, and apara Brahman means the Tantras and Agamas and Puranas. So all these different ways, because this means up here, the M means apara Brahman, the manifested world, or other mantras like this, right? And the Chandra Bindu, that sound, right, means the Bindu, the dot, means the speller of darkness, right? So Shiva, Prakriti, satisfaction, manifested Brahman, the speller of darkness. Those ideas, those words, ideas, concepts, deities, together in seed form go to make this mantra. So it says, Hrillekayā parā-śakteḥ. They were worshiping pūjāṃ. They were doing puja. They were worshiping the parā-śakteḥ, the supreme Shakti. Here in this text, she's known as Bhuvaneshwari, supreme Shakti. The Shakti that lived as Sati, that withdrew, that they're praying to take rebirth as a wife, as Parvati, to marry Shiva, right? That Shakti is also within our own body. That Shakti is within everything, is everything, has become everything. That's Supreme Shakti. They're worshiping her, with this mantra, with the Hrillekha mantra, Bhakti Pūjāṃ. Cakrur-atandritāḥ. Chakruhu, they were doing this, right? Atandritāḥ. Tandritāḥ. Atandritāḥ. What is tandri? When you put a short A in front of many words, it becomes the opposite, right? Vidya and avidya, himsa and ahimsa. So here is tandritāḥ and atandritāḥ. Tandritāḥ means sleep. Atindraha means without sleep, right? So that means they did so not sleeping. They stayed awake and did puja to the supreme goddess with this mantra, with her bij mantra, with her pranava mantra, the Maya bija or Hrillekha mantra, right? But like many words, to be not sleeping, like in English we can do this too. It means awake, right? And to not sleep, and to not be asleep means to awake, or to not be sleepy means to be wakeful, right? So they did it was wakefulness, means another way of saying they were alert, right? So you have to think of, you have to think this, you have to the words mean something, but they mean more than what they say. It means awake or not sleeping, but it means wakeful, it means alert. It also means unwearied, without not being discouraged, not being tired, not being bored, not being giving up, right? Like this, right? Unwearied, right? It also means with vigilance. To be wakeful means if somebody's awake in the house, nobody will break in, right? You'd be vigilant, you'd be fully awake, to be fully aware, like fully vigilant. So this is what's required. All these sadhanas, chanting of mantras, meditation on mantras, meditation and samadhi, the opening verses, the mother's sacrifice, the opening sacrifice of the 3-day rites, all the things we've mentioned so far, recitation of hymns, recitation of collections of names, the rest of and what do we, for the previous thing, mental sacrifices, nyasa, worshiping the supreme goddess with her bij mantra known as Hrillekha. All this has to be done with full attention, with full wakefulness, without laziness, without dullness, right? There's a moment, I don't know if any of you watched this at these shows. We watched whole summer one time, thousands of hours and hundreds of episodes of Devanki Dev Mahadev. I mentioned this before. The story of the serial that was popular in India, a mythological serial in the life of stories of Shiva and Parvati, Shiva and Sati. But there's one where they go into the tantras, where Shiva begins, like all the tantras, Shiva is teaching the tantras to Parvati, right? And in the story, at least whether or not it's from a text, I don't know, but they dramatize it in the series very beautifully, very powerfully, I think, where they're at the Duni, he's instructing her in different types of tantric meditation. That's how we get our tantras, right? And there's yantras all around her, and there's all the things that are being done. She's teaching all the tantras. And while he chanting mantras and giving these long instructions and these long, complicated pujas, teaching her, she falls asleep. And he goes, Parvati, right? And says, you fell asleep during these pujas. You fell asleep during this practice. You fell asleep during my instruction. He says, for this, I can't teach you anymore. And not only that, this body is useless now. You'll have to take another body. You have to be born. And so in the story, this is how she gets born. Parvati takes born as a fisherwoman, right? It's also a very beautiful, this is the folk traditions of India, right? Parvati gets born as a fisherwoman and learns from a fisherman father how to concentrate on fishing. Because a fisher person has to be very hardworking, ever awake, up early, concentrating with full concentration, watching the hook, watching the net, watching like that. And so when she masters concentration, right, then Shiva takes birth. He appears also, marries her, and then they go back and they continue their instruction, right? But the whole story about especially in puja and tantric puja, to be very wakeful, not to fall asleep, and all that means, it's like, and also she has to, her body as Parvati gets wasted by falling asleep during instruction. So I think is that we have to be very careful not to waste this body by falling asleep, by becoming distracted, by losing attention, losing enthusiasm, right? So they practice unwearied, they worship the supreme goddess with the mantra known as Hrillekha, right? Ityevaṃ, bahu-varṣāṇi, kālogāj-janamejaya. Ityevaṃ, bahu-varṣāṇi. Thus, bahu, many, varṣāṇi means years. Thus, many years, kalaha, here the kala, and agat becomes kālogāj, comes from, as far as I understand, kalaha and agat means many years passed. In this way, many years, long period of time has passed, right? Oh, Janamejaya, remember who's being spoken? Vyasa is speaking to the king Janamejaya, telling him the story, right? Many years. So the gods, their years, the way it's interpreted, right, is longer than our years, right? A Deva year, this is how it's, if you want to understand, think about this. A year for the Devas, as per most different texts will say something different, but the general understood conception is 360 human years is one Deva year, right? So they perform sadhana for thousands of our years, right? Sorry, of their days. I mean, their many days. So they performed for, it would have been tens of thousands of years, human years. They performed this sadhana. So at least if we take it, how does it mean to us that we may have to perform sadhana for some time, and we may have to practice it with sincerity, with paraha, with full attention, with full absorption, and antandritaḥ, without weariness, without tiredness, without sleepiness, right? We need to, sadhana needs to be performed for long period of time. Krishna says, Arjuna says to Krishna, you're asking me to control the mind, my Lord, is like controlling the wind. It's impossible. You ask me to do something, it's not possible. Isn't what it is? By practice, right? By renunciation and practice is possible. In the Yoga Sutra, it says yoga abhyasa, right? By practice of yoga, these things are attained and obstacles are removed. What are the obstacles? What are to be attained? I mean, it lists the obstacles and lists the attainment. But how are we to attain? How are obstacles to be removed? By practice. And a yoga abhyasa has been glossed by the commentators to be daily practice over a long time. Regular daily practice over a long time. That is what's required. This is what this text is saying. At least this is what the gods are said to have done. They practice very carefully, properly, with sincerity, all types of different sadhanas for many years. Many years and time passed away. Oh, Janamejaya, right? We have to remember, unfortunately, I promised somebody in our YouTube comment section to talk about, and I didn't get to it. We'll fold it into the next coming weeks. It's a theme throughout the Devi Bhagavatam. Devi Gita is the theme of self-effort and grace, right? We can end with pointing a few points on this, is that they did a lot of sadhana, maybe even difficult sadhana, at least with attention they tried, right? They went to the Himalayas, whatever that means. They practice all the different sadhanas, whatever that means. And then something happened. Well, next Wednesday, we'll see what happens. It starts with somebody's going to show up and they're going to have a major experiences in the next verse. And I would suggest our students and those following this course this class you can read next 2-3 verses to see the description of how it appears. You can read some of the commentary, the Mackenzie Brown book if you have it, to kind of prepare a little bit as we'll go through that description of their divine encounter with the goddess. To prepare, we've finally got to where she appears, right? But what were they doing? Did they win her? Did they convince her? Did they do enough sadhana that she had to appear, right? So we mentioned a few weeks ago that our sannyas guru told us that all sadhana is manashuddhi, is for purification of the mind and heart. And so that we can do, right? Swami Turiyananda said, the Divine Mother is not, God is not something you can buy. So many rupees you get like an eggplant or something in the market. You can't, so many japa, so many prayers, so many pujas, so many nyasa and antaryāgas, and you get her. Right? Not like that, right? Sadhana is not mechanical and not it's not mechanical, that's what I mean, but it's not exactly like that. It purifies the mind and heart. It concentrates us. And in such an environment, in the pure mind and heart, this is how I word it. This is my own slant. So not everybody will agree with the way this works, but this is how I understand it, right? In the sadhana purifies the mind and heart. In the purified mind and heart, God's obvious, right? God, my guru used to say, God is the only reality. Why don't we see? Right? He says only the body and mind's in the way. And yoga is only to control the body and control the mind. Then the reality, which is the only reality, can be seen. Right? So this is the yogi's clear-headed description, right? So in the devotion, the way we put it, a little more devotional or less yogic way, is that when the body and mind are purified, God remains self-revealed. Because devotion is the nature of the soul. The nature of our being is devotion. We use the example, Tucker used the example of a magnet pulling a needle. Its nature is to be pointed towards the magnet. It doesn't need to do anything or win anything. But if it's encrusted with dirt or mud, it may not move, it may not feel the pull. If you wash it, then devotion happens naturally. If you remove mud and crud from a needle, the needle will automatically be attracted to the magnet. The soul, the mind and heart are purified, the body, mind, and heart are purified, the soul's naturally attracted towards, that's called devotion, attracted towards God. And God responds. She cannot hold herself from devotion. So we can see, maybe we can, and I think it's interesting, not only it ends with a tantric culmination of Bij mantra worship, but Bij mantra, here, Hrillekha mantra is the heart. It's a scratch. Now at this point, it enters the heart. The heart is pure. The heart is scratched, is carved, is and as soon as a certain level of purity comes, then she reveals her. She doesn't reveal herself. She's revealed. She's already there. We're purified, revealed. But that from the other side, we can see. We think of it. I also see that as entirely God's grace. God's grace, when we're purified and we call out, she responds in grace. But she's always responding in grace. This is Ramakrishna said, we quoted this last week. The wind of God's grace is always blowing. Put up the sail and catch it, right? The wind of God's grace is always blowing. Her grace is always, she's always revealing herself. We tune ourselves to it, and we never know when the magic moment is. This is what we have to do. We do sadhana, we sit with her, we pray, we do our and eventually, not eventually, guaranteed. This the scriptures say, and the saints say, guaranteed that her response will come. Her response is even happening now, right? We need to clear ourselves up a little bit. So maybe these sadhanas, all the gods are doing, or the one God, you and me, are doing different acts of sadhana to purify that the one who is obvious can be seen and not be hidden. So we'll leave it. Oh, one thing I want to say. One, I want to show a picture. I'm going to go out of this and go into another share to give you some inspiration. This is a great disciple of Sri Ramakrishna named Gopalarma, Gopala's mother, right? And Gopalarma, she, what's her name is Aghoramani Devi, right? She was a devotee of baby Krishna, and disciple Sri Ramakrishna at the end of her life, but she was a devotee of baby Krishna. And she did japa, she chanted Krishna's name. I may get the numbers wrong, but I'm not, if I'm exaggerating or under, maybe 17 hours a day, 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day, right? For 50 years, 60 years, 18 hours a day, 50 years, 18 hours a day, 50 years, right? As a result of which, her baby Krishna, I have my baby Krishna, I'm hoping he comes alive to me one day. He sits on my desk and watches me look at YouTube clips of kirtan, like, I don't know exactly my sadhana exactly is, but she had baby Krishna, but baby Krishna was alive to her, would play with her, talk to her, take her food, steal her things, right? She had the living, open-eyed experience, encounter with the divine 24 hours a day, right? And her sadhana was 18 hours a day, or some number like that, for 50 years, not break, right? And Swami Chaitananda jokes with us when he tells a story, inspiring story of Gopalarma, right? He says, we do 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening. And the next day we do 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening. And we should, I encourage you to do 15 minutes in the morning, 15 in the evening, right? But we have also, we cannot do what she has done. And maybe we don't need to do what she has done. But people like her can be our heroes and inspire us to do a little bit more, right? To have that longing where her life is inconceivably inspiring. There's one, she lived in a tiny little room in the side room of a temple nearby Dakshineshwar, right? Doing her job. She had a mat and she did her japa. And some of the disciples saw, Thakur's disciples after his passing, that, they give her a gift. They saw that she had, her mosquito net had holes in it, right? And so they bought her, maybe Swami Vivekananda did this. He bought her a new mosquito net that she could meditate without being bit by mosquitoes, right? And huge mosquitoes by the Ganga in Calcutta, right? And so the next day she walked, and then the next day she came back and gave Swamiji or the monks the mosquito net back. He says, why are you giving it back? He says, the whole night I'm thinking, oh, what if a mouse eats my mosquito net? They go, such a beautiful mosquito net the brothers have given me, right? This is very costly, how much I have to take care of the mosquito net. And the whole night I'm worried about taking care of this piece of property. He says, anything that takes my mind away from my Gopal, I do not want that thing. So you please take it back. right? Think about that level of devotion. Anything that takes my mind away from God, that I don't want. Even, so I get very inspired, emotional thinking of her, one of our heroes, of course. And so Swami Chaitanya jokes. He had a devotee in St. Louis. He says, talking about her, it's like how much purity and how much devotion she had, and looking at the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, how much they practiced and how much they realized how much grace they had, right? 17 hours a day, 18 hours a day, 50 years. He says, looking at one of the lady devotees at the center, he says, you want to realize, joking, teasing with her, right? Not actual criticism, right? You want to realize God sitting, watching TV, drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, right? He goes, yes, Swamiji, that's what I want. Give me that method. That's exactly what I want. You know me perfect, So anyways, we'll not be too critical in our self-criticism also, but we have heroes in throughout all traditions of those who wanted God more than their next breath, right? And I think these verses ending with Hrillekha, it culminates with finally their worship Supreme Shakti with the very lines and wounds and scars of their heart, Hrillekha, right? That's what's required, perhaps. So we'll leave it there. I went a little, not too much over, an hour and a half, but we're finally there. Next week, the Maha will appear. Jai Sri Guru Maharaj Ji ki Jai, Jai Mahamahi ki Jai, Jai Swamiji Maharaj Ji ki Jai, Jai Bhuvaneshwari Devi ki Jai, Jai Ma Dakshineshwari Avatarini Dakshina Kali ki Jai. Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Any questions or comments?
Guruji, I have a quick question.
Yes, Elijah.
So in thinking about just sort of how traditionally mantras like the Hrillekha mantra or the Omkara or I mean the Pranava mantra or any of these things are kept like sort of secretive. I was just thinking about the song that I forget who composed it, but in the Ramakrishna mission, they sing it like every evening. It's the Om Hum Om Hrim Ritam.
Yeah, so that
I was just thinking, like, why is that so, like,
Yeah, well, so obviously, the Swami Vivekananda had a different conception of some of these things, right? And so in Swami Vivekananda and the Ramakrishna mission are both a mixture of orthodoxy and extreme liberality, right? And so they observe all orthodox customs, but they do so in an extremely liberal way, right? Without some of the normal restrictions. An example, like if you watched our Falahari Kali Puja, we do Pushpanjali at the end, where everybody holds flowers, and then Ushama will recite Pushpanjali mantras, right? A whole series of mantras. And so we learned the Pushpanjali mantras from Haradanji, the Haradan Guruji from who was the head priest of Dakshineshwar, who taught us our pujas here and brought and installed Ma here. And there so when he did it, everybody would take, and then everybody repeat after me. Namo Vishnu, Namo Vishnu, Namo Vishnu, Namo Apavitro Pavitrova, right? The actual mantra is Om Vishnu, Om Vishnu, Om Vishnu, Om Apavitro Pavitrova, right? But the habit, especially in Bengal, in Calcutta and Bengal like that, when you're doing things publicly, to a mixed group of just an audience, I mean, a mixed, you don't know who's there, you don't know what, and therefore we, instead of saying Om, you say Namo, right? Instead of Om, you put Namo, right? If you go to Bellarmine, when they Pushpanjali, they go, everybody repeat after me, Om Vishnu, Om Vishnu, Om Vishnu. They're not hiding Om, right? But that's because those who come, they're in their world and they're devotees, and that's how their presentation, right? So same with other beaches. So that you're thinking of the Ramakrishna Stotram. There's a Arati hymn composed by Swami Vivekananda in Sanskrit. He composed two main hymns that are sung during Arati. the Kandana Bhavana, which is a hymn that they do during the arati, composed in Sanskritized Bengali. It's Bengali, but mostly Sanskrit words. Very beautiful. And then afterward, they sing a stotram, I think four verses or four and a half or 4 or 5 verses. And it starts, Om Hrim Ritam Tvamachalo, right? And it's yeah, you're right. I mean, they're doing it publicly. We also sing that publicly. It's our tradition, you know, on the strengths. If there's any mistake, the mistake goes to Swami Vivekananda. And Swami Vivekananda said, if I've made any mistakes, I've only done it to help people. So you have to forgive me, right? Everything I've done is for the good of others. So we're covered by his protection, right? But it means that mantra, very interesting. Om Hrim Ritam Tvamachalo. You are Tvam Achalo. You are, what are you? You are the one known by 3 words. Om, Hrim, Ritam, right? Om is the Vedantic word for Brahman. That means, O Ramakrishna, you are the Brahman known as Om. O Ramakrishna, you are the goddess known as Hrim. And you are Ritam. Ritam is a very ancient Vedic word for Dharma, or for truth. Right? You are truth unchanged. Ritam, it's a nature, it's an ancient word for it's more than true and way older than the idea of Dharma. Ritam. It's the divine way things are. Ritam. You are the truth unchanging. Right. So that's what a statement of who are you, Sri Ramakrishna? It starts with a very bold statement. You are that being which is known by the mantra Om, Hrim, and Ritam. You are Brahman, you are truth, you are the goddess, the supreme goddess known as Mecca. So, but anyways, yeah. Hrim, Om, Hrim, Ritam.
Guruji,
So you see, but when we sing that, I mean, one last point, when we sing that, we're not just talking about it, we're singing it. So these mantras are either they're used in puja, and that song is a song at the type of puja. So, and the assembly of who's the authority? Swami Vivekananda said anybody who worships Sri Ramakrishna can chant this song. So just by the fact that you're a devotee of Ramakrishna and gone to his temple, seen his form, and bowed your head to him, that means you're authorized to say this mantra and to do this puja together. You know. So it's also not just being talked about and used casually. It's being used in a ritual, right? That ritual is public and very liberal because of Swami Vivekananda's liberalness and open-hearted and open-mindedness. We also should understand we shouldn't take advantage of going beyond tradition just because we can, right? We should do things respectfully of the tradition itself. So I'm not saying don't do that. I've spoken these words, and in conversation we talk about it, we may use these words, but just be a little bit respectful that even the scriptures that reveal these words don't say the words and don't write the words. So that's the thing, you know. So that's something to remember. And sometimes some of the texts will even not only not say the word, they won't say Hrillekha mantra. Like this one says, you know, some of the tantras will give a secret code where unless you know the code, you won't even know that this mantra is being referred to. You know, so it means like will say, like, for instance, saying Shiva and followed by Prakriti, and then the dispeller of sorrow preceded by the manifest Brahman. Right. It's like, what does that mean? Then you realize, oh, that's Hrim. That must be Hrim. Things like that. So sometimes it's really hidden. So it's not that they're secret. Sometimes tantric things are by nature in the world on the edge of the occult side, which is hidden side and esoteric side. Right. Esoteric is the proper word. But sometimes they're not just that they're secret or esoteric, is that they're powerful and sacred. And part of something being sacred that we do not use them casually. We don't say sacred things casually. We don't treat sacred things casually. It's not that like Ma Kali here, Kali Mandir is not secret. Anybody can come, proper hours. Right now you have to sign up to come. You can come see her, right? But if people talk stupid in front of her, or people get too close to her, or people sickles her back, I mean, people can't treat her. We have to treat her sacredly. Anybody's welcome to treat her sacredly, right? So we have to. So it's not a matter of secret. Some things are secret. We have to appreciate that there's traditions like that, right? But I think more important than overemphasizing the occult and secret and esoteric, hidden, initiatic, nature of things is that these things are sacred. Sacred requires, has protocols. But the way we show respect to the sacred is there's traditional ways. Those ways are changing. The modern world's different than the ancient world for sure. And modern times, the modern sages have adjusted, and we trust their insight and how they adjust, like Swami Vivekananda and the like. They've adjusted things, and we're adjusting to them. We're following their, not just following. The only reason we can do any of this is because they were liberal-minded and said it was possible. Right? Some people would think that this conversation is completely blasphemous, and I'm totally out of line for even looking like this or talking like this or thinking like this. Right? That's okay. Maybe they're right, but I'm following Swami Vivekananda. I'm following my guru. We're following our gurus who've liberalized this, but doesn't mean that they've profanitized it, right? They're just liberal. They're being very liberal in who has access to the sacred. And the general term mood in the modern world and Ramakrishna, post-Ramakrishna world, is the requirement minimum is extreme respect and sincerity. So I think Mal overlooks lots of our mistakes if we're sincere and respectful. But if we're insincere and disrespect, we should be careful how we use these words. Anyway, Swamiji, you were saying something. I kept going. I couldn't stop. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I believe you were talking about rhythm. I believe it's where we get the English word rhythm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right.
That idea of the naturalness of things.
You are that. Yeah. The very flow and pattern of nature itself. The truth of nature. Beautiful. Anything else? Anyone else? Any comments? Sitaram. Okay, then. Your last chance. Going once. So if you can, for next week, I'll post on the page the link to the talk on Nyasa if you're interested in Nyasa. If you aren't tired of my voice joining on, it's another hour and 20 minutes. And if you can, read verse, where are we here? 26 to 29, the next last 4 verses. I will describe her appearing as a flash of light and then taking on the form of the more well-known form of the goddess. And you can meditate a little bit, kind of contemplate that. It's very beautifully told in just 4 verses, but there's like we've noticed, we're spending a lot of time on these verses lately because there's a lot packed in to these verses. And once after this, the gods will start praying to her. Oh my goodness, those verses are those are the most bewildering, sublime verses I've ever read in my adult life doing this. So can't wait to think about those a little bit with you. All right, dear ones, good night. Good night, good night.
Good night, thank you.
Good night, good night. Giri Mom, Jai Mom, Giri.
Jai Mom.
How's the three of your health?
We're all well and
Good.
quarantining from each other so that I don't get it.
Yeah, so you had nothing, right? Good,
I am testing negative, so
good. And Durga Devi is feeling better.
much better. Yes. Probably not contagious, but we're following the rules.
Yeah. Good. We're praying for you.
Yes.
I also we had a Bengali doctor who specializes in what's going on right now. And I mentioned, because, I'm worried about certain people like that. He says, don't have to worry, nothing. No worry at all.
Yeah.
Says, don't worry, put it out of his mind, they're fine.
We're grateful for all the prayers and things, so.
Good. Mom. All right. Good night.
Bye, Mom.
Good night, Elijah.
Sleep well.